Hello everyone. I hope this message finds you fit and fine. My name is Shashank Tyagi and I welcome you all to StudyIQ. Russian President Putin meeting Chinese President Xi Jinping, especially when there is tension going on Ukrainian border. This is not just another meeting. This meeting has potential to create ripples in power balance of the world. And that is why understanding these issues becomes important. So what is happening as of now? Ukraine is quivering due to the fear of invasion from Russia. And USA is aggravating, giving signals that sanctions will be imposed if anything such happens. There can be military response too. Now, with respect to this particular meeting, Western media is saying this meeting is a choreographed meeting to show solidarity between these two powers, to give message to USA that these two powers are standing together. Now, about Ukraine. Ukraine was part of Russian Empire, then later became part of USSR. When USSR got disintegrated in 1991, then Ukraine became an independent nation. But when it comes to population, around 18% population, majorly on eastern part of Ukraine, is belonging to Russian ethnicity. An interesting point that Russian President Putin's mother was of Ukrainian ethnicity. So, in the hearts of many Ukrainians, especially in the eastern part of Ukraine, they see themselves belonging to Russia. Now, the point is, Russia has been backing these rebels in eastern part, especially Luhansk and Donetsk, to actually rise up to the cause that Ukraine should not become part of NATO. Now, some of you might be thinking, since it's an independent nation, then it should have all the say about which group Ukraine wants to become part of. But this is not so simple, as relationships are not so simple, right? There are complexities involved. As I said, Russia has security concern. In one conversation, one analyst was saying that Russia is like a boyfriend who had a breakup with girlfriend Ukraine, and now Ukraine wants to forge relationship with another boyfriend, say EU, NATO, and now this jealous boyfriend don't want this to happen. And that is why this jealous boyfriend is escalating tension, giving message that I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll integrate. But this girlfriend Ukraine is saying, no, I'm not going to be with you now. Now, this is about a joke. Now, the point is, it is not so easy for Russia to let it be. And it is not about ideology. There's pure geopolitics involved here. Russia is dependent on, you can say, these routes which connect Russia to Europe when it comes to export of natural gas, export of several minerals for trade. And major industrial hubs of Russia are concentrated on borders of Russia. And Russia has fear that if on eastern part, Ukraine and other parts become part of NATO, then NATO forces will install their weapons on the borders of Russia, which will be a threat to the security of Russia. And that's why this relationship becomes complex. Now, there are three prominent issues. One is this protest regarding invasion of Crimea happened in 2015. Crimea, which was earlier part of Ukraine, now annexed by Russia. Then NATO membership of Ukraine, as I told you. Then separatist movements are going on in Ukraine, as I told you, Luhansk, Donetsk, eastern part of Ukraine. Now take a look over this background. 1945, Cold War begins just after World War II. And this 1948, NATO was formed, a mechanism of collective defense which was formed to stop expansion of USSR towards Europe. But in 1991, we saw disintegration of USSR, and after that, a new phase started in Russia as well as US relationship. Why I'm saying this period is called Yelstein Era, because Gorbachev, the last serving president of USSR Federation as he was gone, Yeltsin came onto this position And he himself adopted various liberal policies, which were you can say uh, which USA and Western Europe were flag bearer of. So it means relations became cordial. And after Mr. Putin became the president. And you can see this line. All this warned Putin plaudits that US President George W. Bush said about what he said about Putin. Very straightforward and trustworthy person. George W. Bush is talking about Putin. So it means relationships were cordial, right? And another statement, a sense of his soul, means president is saying that he got sense of his soul. Such is the clarity in his soul. And Bush Secretary Colin Powell, she said that Russia played crucial role in success of USA in Afghanistan. So it means relationships were fine, right? And they were having, you can say, convergence on following issues. For example, nuclear safety, non-proliferation, counter-terrorism, space exploration. Then some of you might be thinking, then what went bad? Before coming to that, now see the statement made by Vladimir Putin. When he was in USA, some journalists asked, Sir, what's the status of Cold War? Do you think Cold War is still continuing, Cold War 2.0? Then he said, no. Those who think Cold War is going on or can come, then they don't have real knowledge of the changes which have happened in the world. So he was using this word, inconceivable, means Cold War cannot happen now. So such was the positivity from Putin's side. Now what went bad? It was 2004 when this area, Estonia, Lithuania and Latvia, these independent nations, which were once ruled from Moscow because they were part of USSR. Now these three nations joined NATO. It means in these areas, NATO forces can install their military equipments which can threaten the security of Russia. So at this point, you can say this was a turn in the relationship between Russia and USA. Apart from this, a second incident happened, which was this NATO summit in Bucharest. And you can remember it like this Bucharest made Putin restless because in this meeting, these NATO powers made promise that in future, Georgia and Ukraine will be admitted into NATO. Although this has not happened, Ukraine has not become part of NATO as of now. But the point is, this promise made Putin insecure, or you can say more alert about the security or the interests of Russia. I hope all of you would agree with the Putin on this point, right? And after this, Putin declared pivot to Asia. It means now Putin resolved that I have to make my own counter efforts regarding the expansion which these Western forces are making towards Russia. Now, in 2014-15, what was going on in Ukraine? Ukrainian parliament agreed that, okay, we are going to enter into a free trade agreement with European Union. Putin did not wanted that. And at that point of time, the president of Ukraine, Mr. Yanukovych, was in favor of Putin and he rejected signing this particular proposal, which was passed by parliament. So as this rejection happened, people were on roads. There was kind of revolt happening at that point of time. Finally, that president left Ukraine. But this gave a message that Ukraine population want sovereignty in respect of relationship they want to forge with European Union. And this was a threat signal for Putin. And after that, action was taken in Crimea. After this annexation by Russian forces, a referendum was taken, and in this referendum, as Russia says, that Crimean population said that they want to be with Russia. Although Ukraine said that particular referendum was forged. That was not true. Referendum is taking consent from the people, what they want. They want to be with Ukraine or they want to be with Russia. Russia says they wanted to be with Russia. Now, So after this Crimean annexation happened. The Western Bloc, US, led by US, they imposed heavy sanctions against Russia, trade embargoes against Russia. But at that point of time, Russia found an ally who was China. China said, I am there. I'm going to give you money. You give me energy resources which I need. So this way your economy will sustain these trade embargoes. So this Russia and China became logical partners at that particular point of time. Now, China did not actually officially accept it, that Crimea is part of Russia, but China maintained a strategic silence, right? And China even supported Russia on this point that yes, Russia is having genuine security concern from Western Bloc. Now take a look over the timeline of relationship between China and Russia along with this US. So this is West. So Putin provided logistical support and intelligence support when US was having war in Afghanistan. I'm talking about 2001, and that's why USA was accepting that Russia's role was crucial, and that's how we won the war in Afghanistan, right? At that point of time, Russia has also signed a friendship treaty with China. It means good relations of Russia on both sides in 2001. In 2002, now we need to go back to the Cold War era. In 1972, US pulled out of this anti-ballistic missile treaty. Ballistic missile, which is used for long-term target, long range target. And Russia got the news that now USA is investing heavily on ballistic missiles, which can be targeted towards Russia. So it means relationships were getting suspicious at that point of time. Suspicious, I'm using. Now, this 2004 was turning point when these Baltic nations, as I told you, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, they joined NATO, right? At that point of time, countries signed agreement fully demarcating their shared borders. It means Russia and China agreed that they don't have any border issue, right? That is the first step to forge strong relationship. Now, NATO Bucharest summit, as I told you, second incident which made Putin restless. And thus China overtakes Germany and Russia's largest trading partner. It means China was enhancing its trade partnership with Russia. Now in 2012, Putin unveils Russia's pivot to Asia strategy. Russia and China begin annual joint naval exercise. Now, this is not just a naval exercise. We know that China is having adversaries in South China Sea, in East China Sea. China is having issues with regard to exclusive economic zone as well as issues regarding Spratly and Paracel Islands in South China Sea. Similarly, issues in East China Sea, for example, Diogyu Island. Now, if they together actually do this naval exercise, it gives signal to the neighbors that yes, we are exercising. It means we are ready in case of any conflict happens. Now, in 2014, Ukraine crisis happened, as I told you. Russia annexed Crimea and relationship with West went into, you can say, off track. At that point of time, they signed, means China and Russia signed 400 billion contract powers of Siberia gas pipeline after decade of talks. This pipeline is an important project of Russia-China relationship. We are going to talk about it also. US Congress approves additional sanctions over Moscow's alleged election interference. You must have heard, this was in news, that during the Donald Trump election, there was some, play of certain, you can say, online fraud was happening, and it was said that some Russian hackers have backed these, you can say, hackers who have done some wrongdoing in US election, right? So there were these allegations, and after these allegations, the US said they have some credible evidence, and that's how sanctions were leveled against Putin again, or Russia again. Then US withdrawal from 1987 Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. Then Putin reveals, with regard to China, reveals Russia is helping China develop anti-missile early warning system. These weapons may give you tactical advantage, and this tactical advantage is used to negotiate. These are like bargaining chips in national politics. Now in 2021, what happened? We saw Russia deploys 1 lakh soldiers on Ukrainian borders. And now in 2022, from where we started our conversation, Xi Jinping meeting Putin and giving a message to West. Now, by this discussion until now, I think it is quite clear to you that Putin has gone from an ostensibly pro-Western relationship, as Putin came to power, to one where China and Russia are together to counter force this, you can say, US hegemony. Now, what Russia demands? Russia demands only one thing, that is security. It means legally binding security guarantees. That is what Russia wants. And that is why Russia is saying this expansion of US and Western bloc in this eastern neighborhood of Russia should not happen. This is what it means. Now, if diplomacy fails, Putin has threatened for military technical response. It means military response is not off the table. This 1 lakh troops are not there just for show, right? If Western bloc does not give assurance of this security, legally binding, then technical response can happen. Now, China is our strategic cushion. This is said by Russia. And Russia is saying if sanctions happen, we can lean on China. And China is going to provide us military, political, and economic support. Now, take a look on the prospects which China is gaining. So you can consider it in, you can categorize in your mind. First comes the trade. China is Russia's largest trading partner. Second comes long-term energy security. So first is trade, second is long-term energy security. China and Russia are building pipeline so that China's energy needs can be secure for future. Third, you can say geopolitical counterweight. So trade, long-term energy security, and geopolitical counterweight. What does it mean? As I told you, that China is having issues in South China Sea, East China Sea, right? And USA has partners in South China Sea as well as East China Sea to counter China, right? So here, China and Russia forging strong alliance and doing this naval exercises, military exercises, and also engaging into counter-terrorism exercises gives a strong signal to the world that we are ready. When it comes to Joe Biden is saying that if Ukraine is annexed, actions will be taken against Russia. Along with this, it may give chance to Biden to actually have a forward, you can say, steps with regard to Taiwan. It means US diplomats and US policymakers may compare Ukraine issue with Taiwan issue. If Ukraine is being annexed by Russia, then Taiwan can also be annexed by China. So means by this particular logic, it will give chance to US to use extra force to secure Taiwan in future. Now, impact of Ukraine invasion on India. Now comes the part of us, means how this impact us. First of all, pressure on India to choose sides. As of now, India has maintained silence, right? Because India wants peaceful, you can say, resolution of this Ukrainian issue. India don't want to go against Russia because Russia has been our all-weather ally. Along with this impact on India's defense sector, if strong sanctions are leveled against Russia after this annexation of Ukraine, then it may impact our defense procurement because many of our defense equipments have parts and other supplies coming from Russia. Impacts on stability in Asia, you know that recent democracy debacle in Afghanistan. So we all need to be more vigilant on the developments in Afghanistan at this time. If these major forces get into conflict, it will give chance to many terrorist groups to make Afghanistan as their, you can say, sanctuary. Long-term friend Russia, we cannot turn Russia hostile. Now solution, what is the solution? India proposed solution in talks, right? And with regard to talks, we can quote Minsk agreement. So there were two Minsk agreement. Number one, so Minsk in Belarus, where An agreement was means agreement was done so that these escalations and this issue of Russian-backed rebels creating instability in Ukraine can be resolved. So in Minsk I agreement, there were 3 points on which both parties agreed. Number one, that prisoners will be exchanged. Number two, humanitarian relief material will be given. There will be no obstruction there. And number three, withdrawal of heavy weapons from these areas. Although this agreement was short-lived, but just after that means next year itself means two agreement happened, and this two agreement becomes important to resolve this current issue. It says designed to end the fighting in the rebel region. As I told you, eastern part of Ukraine. It was agreed that parties will take action to end this fighting, to reduce the human loss, to stop this travesty, and hand over the border to Ukrainian national troops. And on this particular agreement, Russia also signed. So this is the hope. So see you in the next video. I hope this video added value in your understanding. Keep learning, keep growing. Shashank Tyagi signing off.